Welcome to Ray Reads, a podcast where I talk about the books I'm currently reading like I'm in a sad little one-man book club. For this episode of Ray Reads, I will be discussing Wicked Saints by Emily A Duncan. Not to sound like every teacher ever taking the attendance on the first day of school, but I have to warn you that I will be stumbling with the names in this book, so please forgive me. I am on the fence with how I feel about Nadia. She is very sheltered and indecisive, so from the beginning, it's clear that she is not prepared to take on the fate of the world. She is desperately torn between fight and flight, between courage and cowardice. And first, she seems like a strong character as she fights to defend the monastery until she is forced to flee. Now on the run, she is filled with doubts and relies on her gods for guidance. I wish she had been more steadfast in her faith and blindly followed orders at first. That would have made her ascent to freedom more meaningful. But as it is, she frequently disobeys her patron's commands as she allies herself with the Trinavian boy. And here's where most of her indecision comes to play. As she spends more time with her enemy, her feelings become more unclear. She hates him, even as she's falling for him. Too quickly, she places her heart in his hands, even as she tries distancing herself from him. She is young and too eager to love. But how quickly her feelings change toward Malachi's is nothing compared to her and Seraphim. The High Prince led the attack against her monastery, her home. Nadia hates him for murdering her dear friend Constantine. But after basically one day with Seraphim, Nadia forgets all about that and thinks of him as a good man. I wish there had been greater conflict between Nadia and Seraphim, but she really withholds and reserves all of her hate for Trinavians for Malachi's alone, which doesn't make too much sense since that's the boy she's falling for. But whatever. Nadia calls Seraphim charming, but I honestly don't see it. He is a paranoid alcoholic who is more accustomed to the battlefield than social spheres. He is terrible at concealing his annoyance with other people, and he'd rather avoid socializing altogether. He's nice enough to the participants of the Rawalik, but even Nadia can tell that he doesn't actually care. He doesn't want his citizens to starve, but that's kind of the bare minimum for a good person. He was fine with conquering Kaliazen for his own nation's benefit, but we're going to forgive all that. Nadia's plot to assassinate the king of Trinavia to end the war doesn't make a lot of sense. Why wouldn't she have assumed at first that the High Prince General would continue in his absence? I wish the book had more of Malachi's point of view. He's the only character that actually knows what's going on, being the mastermind behind it all. There were points in the story where the plot was unclear, and it lessened my motivation to continue reading. His relationship with Nadia and his betrayal are the only interesting things that happened. I want to believe that some part of him does love Nadia. He smiled and touched her face a lot. If it was all truly just a manipulator, then I'll be astonished. It couldn't have all been an act, right? Ultimately, Malachi's is the most interesting character. He reminds me so strongly of the Darkling from Leigh Bardugo's Shadow and Bone series. As a side note here, Another thing that had me recalling that series is their goddess of the sun, Elena, which is just like Shadow and Bone here. I love the good enemies to lovers stories, as well as the next person, and I kind of wish that's the way the story would have ended. I guess I was looking for a couple like Rysand and Feyre from A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. But it was obvious that this dark romance never had a chance. As much as Nadia was drawn to Malachi's, his power was always too repulsive to her. And now with Seraphim blessed with divine power for whatever reason, I'm afraid that he'll end up with Nadia, and I absolutely resent that. She may have forgiven the prince for murder, but I won't. And it's not even that I really care about Constantine or whether or not he died or was sent to the salt mines. As far as Nadia knows, the prince murdered everyone she loved and destroyed her home. It seems out of character for her to let that all go. This book leaves a little too much unresolved. What's the significance of Seraphim being related to Malachi's? What are they going to do about the sacrifice participants of the Rawalik? Is that just going to stay their dirty little secret? What's up with Nadia's powers and her relationship to the gods? Why on earth does Seraphim have this new power? Where did Constantine find that locket he gave Nadia? How long did he have it for? And why did he wait to give it to her? Here are some random comments that I forgot to fit in before now. The Rawalik reminds me of The Selection by Kiera Cass, and this event and Malachi's both make me think of Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I like how the spell books are treated as weapons, but I wish I understood more about how they work. Why can't the spells be memorized or used without paper? It should explain the power behind them and their limitations better. The title, Wicked Saints, is interesting, and I love how the chapter quotes contribute to it and the world building. I just wish I saw Nadia as more of a saint than a naive girl. So, this book was good, but someone please let me know if the rest of the series is worth reading. I expected a bit more from this book, honestly. I feel like if the characters aren't improved in the next books, then it may not be what I want to read. I'm happy to leave the series here if this is where it peaks. But who knows, maybe I'll give the next book a try.